Everyone, my name is Alicia. It's my privilege to be here today with you. So let me start by asking you a question. How long does it take to save up $1 million? Any answers? Yeah, it depends on what you're doing. But now, how long does it take to borrow $1 million? Very few months, yeah. Just a few months. I hope this simple comparison to show you the power of leverage. So leverage is the key. It helps you to build a scalable portfolio a lot faster and boost your returns. And today I'm gonna go show you how to unlock this superpower, being a non-resident and no Japanese source income. I think Emil talked about how to get a loan as a resident, but I'm assuming many of you are here interested in getting a loan but you don't have any long-term visa or no Japanese source income. So years ago, when Warren Buffett bought into Japanese stock market, everybody took notice. But has everybody thought about how did he finance the money to buy the stock? Yes, you got it. So he borrowed a lot of cheap Japanese yen by leveraging. So I want to follow his approach. So I was very excited to expand my portfolio into Japan by borrowing. But every source that I found online tells me the same thing. If you're a non-resident, if you don't have any long-term visa or don't have any Japanese source income, there's no chance for you to get a loan. But I don't take a no as an answer. So I found a pass. And today I'm going to show you exactly how I got there and how you can get there too. So, quick introduction about Axolotl Capital. We're investors ourselves. We're constantly looking for deals in both US and Japan. So, if you have any property for sale or you want to co-invest in the deal, please reach out. We always love to collaborate. And also, second function for Axolotl Capital is that we provide one-stop service for international investors like you. We help you source offline deals and also help you get the financing, get the loan approved. Also help you find the top tier property managers. They're truly one-stop. And your job is to sit back, check your bank balance, and also watch your portfolio grow. And a little bit about myself. I have a very unique toolbox that help international investor like you. So number one, I'm a licensed attorney in US and also went to law school in Japan. So I get to read all the complex legal documents so you don't have to. Number two, I came from a big four accounting background. I know how to structure the deals, especially cross-border, in the most tax efficient way. So by investing in real estate, it's not just about how much you earn, and it's also about how much you get to keep after tax. Third special tool that I have is that I also work in the lending industry, so I knows the ins and outs of different type of loans, and I can help you to present your portfolio, present your profile, and help you get the loan in Japan. Okay, that's enough about introduction about myself and Axolotl Capital. Let's get into the details. I want to start by reminding you the universal rule of what considered a successful real estate investment. There's three most important components in there. It's finding the deal, getting the loan, and also finding an excellent property management team. So if I can summarize those rules in 6 letters, it would be OPT and OPM. Does anyone know what those means? Yeah, exactly. So we really have to know how to leverage other people's money and other people's time. By sourcing the deals for single families or like Airbnb investment properties, it's probably easier to find online, like Sumo or at home. But for commercial real estate, typically the good deals are sold off market. You need to know the right person to get into access in order to get the good deal. And second, getting a loan as a non-resident, it is very hard. It took us a long time to build a relationship with local lenders who truly understand how to evaluate international investors without residency in Japan. Third, property manager. Property manager is a key to turn your investment into a truly passive income stream, not a second job. A good property manager is not just collecting rent, they also help you do an advertisement, finding the tenant quickly, screening them, and keep your property well maintained. So you can sit back and just watch your portfolio grow. Okay, next, I want to talk about sourcing the deal. So, because I'm focusing on only commercial real estate, this rule is pretty different from Airbnb or single families. So, from commercials, if you want to scale up quickly, you want to find something that bank really likes, which is called financeable properties. Not all properties are financeable, especially for Airbnbs, those IKEAs, it's very hard to get a loan because it does not have liquidities. Most of the loans that we're getting for non-resident will be non-recourse loan, meaning the bank will not lend you based on your credit. It will lend you based on solely on the profitability of the property itself. So those are financing bulk properties, including typically long-term rentals. Bank really like stable stream of income. Every month it comes in on the same day in the same amount, which Airbnb won't be able to qualify. But there's a backdoor to qualify that. We can talk about in the later session. Second, the bank really likes something. It's in a good location, or if you want to sell the next day, you can sell. You put it on the market, you get 5 offers. That's liquidity. Third, typically, when the bank does financing, they want to see a building that's newer because the book value of the building itself depends on the structure. For wooden structure, book value is only 25 years. For light steel structure, it's only 35 years. They will base the life book value to determine how much loan you'll be getting. Okay, here's the 2 narrow criterias the bank really likes, the bank's favorite. Number 1, major metropolitan areas. Those areas always get rent out very quickly. You rarely have any vacancies. Second, multifamily. There's many different sub category within commercial properties, industrial, storage, office, multifamily. And today we're only going to be focusing on the multifamily, especially smaller multifamily type or studio type. Those typically for like one single person to occupy, not for a family. And I'll explain why later. Okay, I want to quickly touch upon the underwriting guidelines of different banks. Typically, there's 2 different methods the bank will use. Number 1 is income approach. Number 2 is cost approach. Most of bank will typically combine those 2 together and adding a different differentiation factors to determine the final loan amount you'll be getting. So I put up a picture. The one is 2 buildings in the same location, same yield. The building on the left is older, and on the right hand side is newer. So does anyone have a guess which one could get more financing? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the newer ones. And also because the land on newer ones is bigger, slightly bigger, so the bank consider the land has more potentials. So once the building finishes lifetime, and if you can tear it down and rebuild, you can build a bigger structure because you can take over the parking lot and make it has a more buildable area. Whereas one on the right hand side, the building already occupied the whole plot of land. There's no potential left for that plot of land. So the bank will generally use different factors and also adjacent road. In Japan, there's the concept of private owned road and public road. So if your property adjacent to 2 big public road, that consider excellence. You can get even more financing just because your land is adjacent to a bigger road. Whereas if you're adjacent to 2 private road, then the bank may use as a factor to reduce the points. You get a smaller financing amount. All right. So next, I would like to discuss why Tokyo and Yokohama metropolitan areas are the best. Number 1, the population density is very high and there's a limited supply. Second, it's very low vacancy. In the next slides, I have a chart to show you how Tokyo compared to other international cities in the world. Third, there's a very high demand, which lead to increased rent. As you may know, as you may heard, that it's very hard to increase rent in Japan, which is not true starting maybe 2-3 years ago. The inflation finally came to Japan, and especially for this studio type, people tend to stay there for a few years and move out, and that's your chance to increase your rent. Okay, here's a chart published by JLL every quarter. It measures all the different cities, how they do compared to others. Number one, um, I want to emphasize Tokyo has the second largest investment amount in 2024. Also, if you look at the quarterly rental growth rate, it's 7.3% growth. That means the rent can continue on the upward trajectory, keeps growing. And the next one I want to notice is Tokyo, among the biggest city in the world, has the lowest vacancy, which is 2.8. So guaranteed your investment will become a truly passive income stream. It comes in pretty stable every month. So here's a typical multifamily single occupancy studio we would like to invest in. There's a picture on the left. Typically, it's just like one bathroom, and with shower, bathtub, toilet, and now sometimes they may have a loft. Depends on the builder. And here's the reason why that the single occupancy studio is the most favorable, the bank's favorite. Number one, because Tokyo is a big hub for students, young professionals, and with the government open the gate to foreign workers, the number of foreigners working in Tokyo just grows exponentially. Also, young people stay longer than ever before they get married, so they tend to stay in a single occupancy studio even more longer, which means lower turnover for a landlord. Third is very resilient to economic shifts. Even if the economy goes bad, people tend to want to save money, so they like staying smaller studio type because they want to control how much they want to spend on rent. They're less likely to upgrade to a bigger place. Lastly, the rent per square foot is higher than the bigger units, than those one bedroom or two bedrooms. That's why we always prefer the single occupancy studio. All right, now let's get into loan requirements for non-residents. So typically the bank would require you to have 35 to 45 down payment. And also the bank will look at the property itself. Since it's a non-recourse loan, the only option banks have is to take over your property if you stop paying the mortgage. They won't pull your credit at all. And typically the bank likes to see the income would be 1.2, at least 1.2 times over your monthly loan payment. Next, the bank will look at your personal income or assets, but they won't pull your credit. They want to know you're a trustworthy investor and have enough down payment for investment in those apartment buildings. There's two different tests. One is annual income test. If you meet the annual income test, then you don't have to provide your assets statement. But if you don't pass your annual income test, then you can provide your brokerage account or whatever saving you have to show bank that I have enough money for the down payment, enough capital. Lastly, the bank usually require to have a local person as your representative. But they start to relaxing these requirements a little bit. So even as a foreigner, you can be the CEO of this Japanese corporation. And next, I'm going to talk about why it's important to use corporate entity to hold the investment as opposed to holding an individual name. So why would we want to use a corporate entity? Number one, tax reason. Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is a question. Yeah, why would we prefer to use corporate entity? Number one, tax planning reasons. I think many of you are aware that if you hold in your personal name, If you sell within 5 years, it will consider to be a short-term capital gain. Then you get imposed 40% of taxes on it. So your exit timing is restricted. But with a corporate entity holding, you can sell anytime you want it, and you don't have to be imposed by the 40% short-term capital gain tax. Also, it's good for inheritance tax. If you want to pass it to your kid, if you have multiple kids, you can give them shares. But if you hold in your personal name, it's very hard to inherit it, pass it along to your kids. You have to sell them and pay taxes and then pass it on to them. Next, for income tax income tax planning, where if you hold in your personal name, you can only deduct the depreciation and some property tax. That's it. But if you hold in corporate entity, there's many things can be your business expenses, such as the salaries you pay for your family, or gifts for clients, transportations, marketing, advertisement, whatever you can use as your business expenses to offset your income. Next, which is also very important, our capital is always limited. We want to be co-invest with other investors. But having the corporate entities, it's very easy to buy a real estate investment with other investors. So we have done a couple of example in the past where the bank would allow more than 2 investors to co-invest in one single apartment building, depending on the size. All right, here's an example of typical Japanese loans. If you bought a property in the US, you probably know the loan documents tend to be hundreds of pages. But here, in Japan, tend to be fairly short. They will tell you how much your interest is and where you should be wiring the money every month. And it's typically a floating rate. So they will let you know before they change the rate, they'll give you notice. And I have a QR code here. If you want the full sample of the loan document, I'm happy to send it to you. Next, typical timeline for the whole process. After identify your investment properties, it usually takes 15 weeks, a little bit more than 3 months, to get the loan approved. First, we need to get pre-qualifications, which meaning submit the documents to the bank. So they verify your fund, they know you're a trustworthy investor. They give you like a, okay, this is not a formal underwriting. But usually if they give you okay, 99% of the time, they will give you the final approval. That's a pre-qualification. And then in weeks 3 and 6, we usually set up the corporate entity. And after we set up a corporate entity, we will start signing the purchase agreement because we will use the corporate entity as a signer on the real estate contract. Once we have the contract signed, now we can start the formal underwriting process, which usually takes another month or so. Once you get the final approval from the bank, then we can finalize and sign the loan agreement and get into closing. So we also have our own property management companies. Once, if you decide to choose us as a property manager, we will typically start advertising your properties once the loan gets approved. So you can get renters faster. You don't have to wait until all the closing. All right, so here's the typical investment apartment buildings that we buy in our portfolio. Usually it's from 8 units and up. And also there's a tax break. If you buy a apartment building that's more than 10 units, your property tax gets lowered to 1/6 of the regular property tax rate. That's the incentive the government's giving out to multifamily property owners. They want you to buy more and rent it to the population. And next, I usually will give my client a profitability analysis and tells you what's the initial cost, what's the terms of loans, and how much initial capital you need to invest in. And I will be going this in details in the next session in the afternoon after lunch. So I'll skip this. All right. Lastly, how can we help you as international investors? Number one, we source all the off-market deals, usually commercial properties more than 8 units and above. And next, we help you do all the paperwork, get you approved for a loan. And third, we provide property management. And we will do all the paperwork for you. All right. Thank you for listening. Now I can take questions.
Yep, raise your hands, please. I'm starting from the back, sorry.
Hi, just a couple quick questions. You said it's a floating rate. How does that rate compare to a home loan, for example? And the other question is, you mentioned the interviews with the bank. If we're remote, how does that happen remotely? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start with the second question first. It's usually via Zoom. This is a new requirement they add on this year. Before, they didn't even do any interviews. It would just, you don't even have to be in Japan. You can just, I did all my loans when I was in the US, never even have to be here. And for the first question, how does the investment loan compare to the residential loan? Those are very two different separate animals, because your residential loan is purely based on your credit worthiness, your soft credit. Like Emil mentioned, they will check your credit, see like if you have any bad record or not. Whereas investment loans typically only rely on the building itself. So it doesn't really matter what your record is, or what your credit score is, how much your debt you have in the US. They will totally, irregardless, all of those. They're purely going to analyze the property itself. That's why for investment loans, for non-residents, it's really hard to get fixed rate. The only product available for non-resident is floating loan. For the residential loan, there's many options available, right? There's floatings, there's flat 35, there's all sorts of loan. I feel like those are kind of harder to compare because our option as non-resident is pretty limited.
Hi. So for income-based qualification, what sorts of documentation is acceptable, and how does that pass through underwriting, and who would be looking at this? Are they based in a certain country? Legal requirements, privacy, and stuff like that. Can you please expand on that? Thank you.
Oh yeah. So the bank usually have their underwriting team here in Japan. And they have each bank varies a lot. So typically we'll mix up those two approach together, income approach and cost approach, and also adding on different factors that I mentioned. The typical location of the land itself and where it's adjacent to what's the surrounding environment is like. It's pretty hard to summarize because the bank won't tell you their criteria. We just know from the experience in the past, typically they will give out maximum 70% loan to value ratio.
Sorry, but on that. So for top reason in the move where
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. To add on that, so if assuming you have U.S.-based income, do you provide a W-2 or a 1099, things like that, to substantiate income?
Oh yeah, not at all. You don't have to provide your W-2 or 1099. The only thing you need will be a tax return. Yeah. Or your bank statement if your tax return doesn't show much income. I know a lot of investors, we tend to not reporting as much income as we wanted to, but as long as you can show your assets, a list of assets.
I have the microphone, so I have a question. Actually, first of all, Alicia, hi.
Hi.
Hi. I actually have a statement. I want to add on what you were showing for the yields for the multifamily with the single residence. The yield, if you're looking at investing in multifamily, long-term rental options are the only way to go with that. I've done the numbers and I've run the numbers. It is not worthwhile to look at a short-term rental option for doing those small one person units. So only look at long-term rental options for that. So that was my statement. My question is, even if you are a resident, is it better to borrow through a corporation? And do they look at the corporation's income when they are assessing how much you can borrow to buy, say, a multifamily home, a multifamily unit?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Tracy. Um, those part of apartment buildings are typically suitable for long-term rentals, but I have also seen investors to turn it into short terms, which could also be very profitable. It really depends on the location. Yeah, I do have one that I'm considering to convert into short term as well.
We
'cause
got
it's
one
good.
customer actually who has, absolutely, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It really depends on the yield rate. Because for short term rental, it's very management heavy. Your property manager takes a big chunk of your investment, profit.
Uh,
So it really comes down to the profit analysis.
A few questions from the stream, sorry. First one is, can you please clarify they do not check your credit history in your home country, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And second question, what's a typical purchase price range for 8 unit in Tokyo? I guess it's like how long is a piece of string question, but
Right. Yeah. It's really depends on the location. Um, yeah. So the closer you are to the center, the more expensive it's going to be for one unit. But we typically only buy the whole apartment building. It's not going to be sold one unit per unit. So I would say typically above 100K for one unit.
And two related questions. One specifically is everything you've explained the same for Australians, and the other one, are there any countries for which it's more difficult to get a loan?
No, maybe China. China, if you're Chinese citizen, it'll be harder, but except Chinese citizen.
Chinese citizens can get loans from Bank of China in Japan, right?
Right,
They're
exactly.
still here.
Yeah, but their interest rate is much higher. Typically, it's 3% and above. And right now, we're helping our clients getting the loans typically around 2.25%.
And next question, what's required as evidence for your financials?
Need financials for getting approved for a loan.
What sort of, I'm assuming what they mean is what sort of documentation do you actually need to show?
Yeah, for your personal statement, it's just your bank statement plus a tax return. That's it. But they don't they don't rely on those documents at all. So
Do
maybe
you have
they're
any
not-
more questions in the room? Because we've got a few in the, yeah.
Lot-
Oh, we have a lot of questions. I'm so sorry. You've been very polite. Seth, do we have a Seth? We don't have a Seth. We do have a
So,
Seth.
my question is, what corporate structure is the best to get a loan? And I guess kind of to follow up on Tracy's question, once you get the loan and if you convert it to a non-long-term rental, what kind of due diligence does a bank do to check that?
Ziv, can I talk about this in the next session, the break room, because those won't be on record. Okay, yeah. So there's a different legal entities that you can use to get financing. Typically, there's a kapusiki gaisha, which in U.S. concept is a C corporation, and there's another one you can use, which is godo gaisha. Whereas you can just treat it as LLC and make it pass through when you're reporting in the U.S. tax returns. So those two entities, the bank doesn't really care which entity type you use. As long as it's a corporate entity, not individual, they will grant the loan.
Is there any possibility for construction financing that would be taken over by permanent financing after the build?
Yes, definitely. We have done that, but the only bottleneck is that you have to buy the land first, all cash. That's one of the bottlenecks. So you do have to put in the bigger capital investment upfront, and you hire the local contractor to do the construction, and then convert into a perm loan.
So the purchase price of the land would be considered as part of the down payment for the entire financing.
Right,
when you
right.
convert.
Yeah, they will consider that as a down payment. Right. Yeah, but it's way more complicated than that we can talk about in detail later. And usually, if you do it that way, to buy the land first and hire a construction company, you get even better deal. Because the construction company, the developer, does not have to put in all the money to buy the land and develop. You're putting the money into buying the land. That's another way to get a better deal.
Hi. Can you give me a current use case as far as interest rate? I know it's variable, and is
Right.
there a cap on that?
Yes, there is a cap. It depends on the loan documents. We can talk about it later. Yeah.
My question is about, you said about the units. If there are more than 8 units, there's less tax. Is this
Less property tax. Yeah.
is this only Tokyo? Or is this all around Japan?
All around Japan. It's just a basic tax rules. They want to encourage you to invest in multifamily because they want you to build houses to supply for the people to live in. That's why they provide this incentive for owners with more than 10 units.
Thank you.
What's your average yield? I know it depends on the property, but average. I'm just all Carol who you.
Yeah. So for Tokyo 23 wards, the gross yield typically around 5 to 6, between 5 to 6. Not net gross yield. But when you go to Yokohama, you can get a better deal, which typically around between 5 to 8. Yeah, similar. Yeah.
5% net yield in Tokyo, sign me up.
Yeah, it's really hard to find. Very hard to find. Yeah. Yeah. But we can typically do the net yields for Tokyo 23 wards around 3.8 to 4.5%.
Sorry, one
Net
quick
yield.
question. One more question from the stream, and then one more from the room, and then we'll have to leave it for the Q&A panel. So
Right.
from the stream, minimum and maximum amounts, people have already been asking for it. What do the banks prefer to lend, and what's their max?
You mean maximum of a loan amount? Loan to value ratio?
Yes.
So let's say if
Amount. LTV you've mentioned is about 30 to 40% cash, and the rest is loan, right?
right, exactly. Yes.
But the amounts.
The amount of loan for each one individual investor, they will loan you up to $3 billion for one bank. And if you already borrow $3 million in one bank, you can go to the next bank.
And then the minimum? The minimum loan that one lend, like you said, they don't do Akias, they don't do smaller
Right,
positive.
exactly. Yeah. So typically, it's similar for US. The loan amount has to be above 50 million yen, which is typically 350K US dollars. Yeah, anything below that, the bank will unwilling to finance.
Okay, it's not a question, it's just two statements. You're absolutely right. Regarding property managers, PM, a PM can make or break you. The professional PMs, all they do is stage, market, just what she said. They are full time. That's what they're doing. They're repairing, they're maintaining. If you think you're saving money by getting a discount PM, come talk to me. I'll show you in Hawaii what happens when you get suckered into a lower rate PM.
Raymond, we appreciate the statements and the
sorry.
comments, but this is for questions and answers, and we're very limited on time. Apologies.
Excuse me. And then
Totally agree on that.
just the last one. I'm sorry, and I promise I'll shut up. If whatever corporate entity you use, you must observe the formalities.
All right,
Right,
thank
which
you,
is
everyone.
not very high cost compared to the US.